Let's talk about why Deftones is simply built different, and why more bands should approach their craft the way Deftones did basically for the entirety of their career so far. If you frequent YouTube, you're probably being bombarded by the reactions to the new Deftones song, My Mind is a Mountain. And since Deftones is one of my favorite bands ever, and Deftones is a band I have covered many times on my channel, I thought it would make total sense for me to talk about the new song and the upcoming album by this magical band. But I thought I should take a different approach to this one. Before moving forward, please drop a like, it helps out a lot, and if you are a returning viewer, please consider subscribing. Think of any band that had a long career and how many changes most bands go throughout their career, taking it as far as basically immigrating into a totally different genre. Linkin Park, for instance. If someone built a time machine and took a record like One More Light back to 2000 and said, "This is how Linkin Park will sound," I'd say you're out of your mind. But it's in fact a reality, and as a result of this change, many fans had a falling out with Linkin Park. The band's response in this case is usually along the lines of, "Did you expect us to write the same record over and over again?" Well, no, but then I look at Deftones, and to me it seems like Deftones have stuck to their own unique sound for the entirety of their career. Of course, they gradually expanded their sound by experimenting with other genres, but they never really abandoned their core sound. Technical advancements have happened throughout their career, and first two records by Deftones sound rather different than their later material in terms of production, heaviness, Chino rapping, and Frank Delgado joining the band with the release of White Pony. Also, Steph, the guitarist of the band, gradually evolved by switching from a 6-string guitar to a 7-string and up to an 8-string by 2010, but it never felt forced. As Steph has displayed tendency of going low on the very first record of the band, in a song like Bored, for example, which was at the time ironically played on a 6-string, and even in standard E tuning, but somehow it sounds low as fuck due to other elements like the tonal properties of his guitar, EQ, effects, and whatnot. But even with the changes that have happened from the very beginning of their career, you could always find a thread that connected all of their songs. There was always an element from every previous record that would carry over to their next record. From their first record, Adrenaline, sounds and direction in terms of writing have carried over to their next album, Around the Fur, with the help of songs like Birthmark, Lifter, and Bored. When it comes to Around the Fur, songs like My Own Summer, Mascara, Be Quiet and Dry, and MX would carry over their core properties to White Pony, and this basically happened through the entirety of their career. Some elements of their sound they have left behind, like Chino rapping for example, but the trajectory and core elements of their music can still be heard today in 2025, 30 years later. As for their new song, it would easily fit in with the band's material on their self-titled 2003 record. Unlike many other bands, Deftones never did a 180 and said, "Our creative well is dry, and we need to change the genre now." Instead, they chose to press on with their original, recognizable signature Deftones sound. Yes, there were some deviations on records like Saturday Night Wrist and Gore, but even then you could easily tell that it's the same band that is simply trying to expand their horizons by venturing into some experimentation, without abandoning the sound Deftones is known for. In fact, Saturday Night Wrist is the album that got me into Deftones, which I have mentioned before. I also have made a video on Gore, which is my least favorite record by Deftones, but is by no means a bad album. I don't think Deftones really have a bad record. Even if Gore is my least favorite record, I can easily admit that it's an interesting experimental venture. I have an entire video about Gore, so I suggest you watch that after this video. Gore was somewhat of a divisive record among fans, but the band kind of made a course correction with their 2020 release, Ohms. It's not my favorite record among the band's discography as well, but they did some interesting things in songs like Pompeii, The Spell of Mathematics, and the title track, Ohms. As a result of the band's approach, I feel like Deftones is very much a timeless band, as they didn't do much of trend hopping. There can be a case made for Diamond Eyes, as this was the time when the usage of 7 and 8 string guitars became quite popular, but even then, Deftones didn't sound like Gent. Instead, they did it their own way. As a result, Deftones are now the biggest they have ever been by keeping their old fan base while at the same time enchanting newer listeners. Nowadays, they are literally one of the most influential bands around. They have inspired a band like Sleep Token, for example, among many others. The ambient and heavy elements of Deftones can be heard in the heavy music scene in many bands. It goes even as far as Chino's vocal approach being implemented quite a bit as well, which is not something I expected to see. But Deftones are still the best at what they do. I can easily draw a parallel between a band like Meshuggah and Deftones in terms of influence. But at the same time, no one can do Meshuggah better than Meshuggah does it. And no one can do Deftones better than Deftones does it. As for the band's new song, My Mind is a Mountain, I think it's a great song even though it is rather simple. We get that signature style of Steph on guitar, the drumming style of Abe is very recognizable as well, and Frank is elevating the song by giving us some synth action and ambience, with the most nuanced performance on the song being Chino's vocal lines. While staying true to their sound, they also did something new, like writing a song that is under 3 minutes long and having only one chorus, which is not something Deftones have ever done with their material, at least to my recollection. All I can say is watch and learn. This is how you evolve a sound as a band while still remaining fresh. Another thing that separates Deftones is that they never try to outdo anyone. In most cases, things are kept rather simple and minimalistic. This is something many modern bands need to take note of, as modern bands usually try to one-up each other by making a crazy squeal sound, show off their vocal range, or write a complex guitar part instead of trying to simply write a good song. To put it simply, sometimes less is more. And going back to literal changes of genres when it comes to some bands, Deftones serves as a proof that you don't need to do a 180 with your sound and then be surprised that your longtime fans criticize you for that change. And don't get me wrong, I fully understand and respect that every band has their own journey in terms of evolution of their sound. But when a band completely abandons the sound that fans fell in love with and the sound that essentially broke the band, it leaves me scratching my head in most cases. And once again, Deftones serves as an example that it's not exactly necessary to do that. And I think the sheer amount of old school fans Deftones managed to keep by their side is a very good proof of that, as I am one of those fans. Needless to say, I'm very excited for the upcoming Deftones album Private Music, due for release on August 22nd. Oh, by the way, the music video for the new single looks very much like Deftones a la 2000s, with Chino especially looking almost the same as he did in 2000. Ultimately, what I think makes Deftones a cut above the rest is that they stayed true to themselves and never really compared themselves to the rest of the scene. And this is why I think Deftones is simply built different. Thank you for watching, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, leave your comments below on Deftones' new song and their upcoming record, and perhaps leave your thoughts on the impact Deftones has had on the heavy music in general. You can also watch one of these videos displayed on the screen, as all of them involve Deftones in one way or another. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.